Well, Sarah, thank you for doing this
Oh, you're welcome.
documentary. It was important to you, wasn't it, to do it?
It was, and I think when Sarah went missing, we did something, is we included so many people, and people held their breath with me for that 17 days. And I kind of feel like they've been on the journey with me, and so it's nice to come back and say, look, we are surviving, we are doing all right, we're not great, you know, nothing's perfect and nothing's rosy, but we're still hanging on in there. And I think that's an important, you know, we often don't get to hear anything positive about these horrible stories. And it's just saying, you know, the other kids are doing okay. They have survived it. The boys are absolutely gorgeous. Charlotte is gorgeous. Ellie is gorgeous, you know, and they're all a bundle of fun and a bundle of everything else.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Because the focus is always on the crime and the child who has gone. And then the focus became about your extraordinary strength and the devastation that you and Michael suffered, obviously. But I think what was lost, perhaps, was the impact that it had on Charlotte and on Lee and on Luke, because, of course, they were there in the field.
I can't even begin to imagine
Yeah.
being that age and trying to cope with that kind of media attention, that kind of campaign attention, knowing that it's for something good, but still having to put up with being all of your friends seeing things in the classroom, seeing things perhaps before you even have, having your friends, families talk about you and your family as if they know you, and it's like, you don't, you know, but you don't know us. I mean, Ellie, my youngest, is 16 this year, and she always says, how come you know everybody? And it's like, I don't know everybody, darling. They just think that they know me because they've seen me on the TV.
Charlotte was so young. I mean, Ellie wasn't even born at the time.
Ellie was after Sarah.
Yeah, Charlotte was just 6 years old. I mean, and Luke and Lee, you know, barely even teenagers at that point. It must have just been so confusing for them, frightening, confusing.
I think if the way that I always chose to bring my children up was with magic and softness and fairyland and everything that a childhood should be is all I tried to give them. What they had was this massive smack of reality, and it almost made me regret giving them the softness because the reality was so opposite. So I think in some ways, little Charlotte had never touched bad in her life. You know, nothing had ever touched her. And suddenly she's smacked with these horrible people that do horrible things.
And you mentioned the 17 days. Of course, those are the 17 days between the moment that Sarah went missing and 2.5 weeks later when her body was found.
Yes.
And as you said, the nation had collectively held its breath because we were all hoping, of course, that she would be found alive. And that was the moment that that hope was just extinguished.
And I made some amazing met so many amazing people in that 17 days.
You know, this amazing strength and resilience that you have, which is just phenomenal. But I know one of the things that has really been a big part of this has been your campaign to change the law and what is now known as Sarah's Law, which is a legacy which I think we should be very proud of, really, in many ways. But tell us a little bit about that and why you felt there needed to be a change in the current law.
I think I was put in a position, maybe a privileged position, where I got to see child protection from the other side. And being able to walk into those rooms as a mum, just an ordinary mum bringing up her children, working, my husband working and everything else, I was able to put a completely different perspective to those people and say, but this isn't travelling, what you're trying to do isn't travelling down. It's not hitting the street, it's not hitting us as parents, it's certainly not hitting the children. And so for the first time, somebody was able to sit in a room and say, I can see why you're doing this, and this is all really very good, but that's not what children want, and that's not helping children.
Because, of course, on that day when your children were playing, they had their freedom for the first time. You'd made the decision, yes, I'll let you play on your own. You're begging me to have that freedom. On that day when they were in that field doing what children should be absolutely free to do.
Absolutely.
They would have had no idea, and neither would you as a family, that a convicted paedophile was in the area who'd already served time for abusing a child, a little girl, not dissimilar age, that he was going to be there. And, of course, Sarah's Law went some way to trying to provide some of that information to parents. Do you know the impact that that has had? How many children might have been protected in the wake of what happened?
I hope with all of my heart that it's better to know than not know. I mean, you know, I can only take it from Ellie being born after Sarah, is that she's grown up. Yes, she knows there's bad stuff out there and there's monsters, and monsters aren't pretend monsters are real, but at least she knows to look. You know, Sarah was brought up in a world where she didn't even know to look. So I hope that's...
And just to clarify, Sarah's Law means that if you have a concern about somebody who's in touch with your child, you can go to your local police constabulary and they are obliged, they will treat it by a case-by-case basis, but they are obliged to inform you if there are any concerns regarding the individual.
They are obliged to do a disclosure on anyone that has a criminal record.
Well, I mean, I would say it must be a success because if I heard it was trialled first in some of the constabularies, and the fact that it's now pretty much nationwide, you know, I'm sure the police are probably adopting it because it is probably a positive thing, and I think that is just fantastic, really.
Well, I tried to engage with as many policemen as possible, men, women, you know, police people as possible, before writing the law and trying to introduce it so that it was more helpful than a hinder. I didn't want to create something that was going to be worse and harder to manage than anything else. What I wanted to do was create a no secret keeping culture. You know, stop keeping the secrets. You know, and I constantly kept hearing that children don't come forward, children don't tell, and I was like, but they do. And as soon as they do, you go, shh, don't say that. Don't say that out loud. You know, don't tell about somebody that's doing that in your community, because we don't want people to know about that. We have to keep that secret, to keep them safe. And it's like, that's not the message you give.
Sarah Payne, The Untold Story, the documentary that we've made, and your children have contributed, and of course, Nanny and Grandad as well for the first time. Absolutely extraordinary, and I'm so grateful that
Gorgeous are my children.
your children are gorgeous, really. You know, Sarah, it's lovely to see you again. Thank you so much.
Tell Piers I'm sorry I missed him.
OK, he'll be glad to hear that. Yeah, of course, he was, you know, involved so much in the original, you know, covering of the story.
Actually, he's a big softy teddy bear, really, isn't he?
Yeah, don't say that.
OK.
Sorry,
I've
babe,
seen his
thank
soft
you.
side.
You have, quite right that you say that.